Welcome back to The Explainer. You know, when we talk about the massive ecological footprint of meat, poultry, and dairy, the conversation usually stays pretty high level, right? We hear a lot about vague sustainability goals and carbon footprints, but how do institutional investors and regulators actually pin a hard, verifiable number on those massive operations? Well, today, we're getting into the weeds. We're going to decode the highly structured data standards that measure these exact environmental realities. It really boils down to this. How do you actually measure the true environmental cost of the food on your plate? I mean, it's one thing to have a nice-sounding sustainability pledge tucked away in an annual report, but it's an entirely different ballgame to audit the exact percentage of water pulled from a stressed aquifer or to track the thousands of tons of animal waste generated by a single processing facility. We're going to explore the exact technical accounting standards that make those granular, real-world measurements possible. Here's our roadmap for today. First, tracking the industry's footprint. Second, the water scarcity metric. Third, measuring water quality non-compliance. Fourth, managing land and animal waste. And finally, why these metrics matter. Section 1. Tracking the industry's footprint. The urgent need for standardized reporting. So, the solution to all this ambiguity? The SASB standards, which are now actually overseen by the IFRS Foundation. Think of them as a universal translator for transparency. It means a massive agricultural company operating in Europe has to report its footprint using the exact same mathematical framework as a company in the Americas. This completely eliminates the guesswork for analysts. By standardizing the disclosure, global capital markets finally have a true apples-to-apples way to see who is actually managing their resources responsibly and who is sitting on massive, hidden ecological liabilities. And the framework gets incredibly specific, which is exactly what you need to cut through corporate greenwashing. The accounting is categorized into exact alphanumeric codes. For example, code FB-MP-140A.1 tracks the total water withdrawn and consumed. Then you have 140A.3 acting as the monitor for non-compliance incidents. And code 168.1 handles animal litter management. We're zooming in on these exact water and land metrics today because, honestly, they form the absolute bedrock of a producer's true ecological impact. You literally cannot understand a food company's financial stability without first grasping these three operational lifelines. Section 2. The water scarcity metric, quantifying pressure in vulnerable regions. Now, a totally fascinating part of metric 148.1 is the strict line it draws between water that is withdrawn versus water that is consumed. And the difference is huge. Water withdrawn might be pumped from a local river to wash down factory processing equipment, and then safely treated and put right back into that exact same river basin. The ecosystem gets it back. But consumed water, that is water that evaporates in a massive cooling tower, or gets physically incorporated into a carton of milk or a packaged chicken breast and shipped across the country. It is permanently removed from that local ecosystem. It's a permanent deficit. But just knowing the sheer volume of consumed water isn't enough, right? The real risk is exactly where that water is consumed. Regulators don't just let companies self-report or guess their impact level here. They actually require them to cross-reference every single one of their operations against a highly specific scientific tool, the World Resources Institute's Water Risk Atlas, known as Aqueduct. Just imagine running a massively water-intensive poultry plant in a geographic region that the WRI has already flagged as having over 80% baseline water stress. I mean, that is a literal existential threat to both the business and the community. To really enforce accountability, companies are mandated to report a very revealing ratio. They have to disclose the exact percentage of their total consumed water that was taken specifically from those high-stress regions. Because 1 million gallons of water consumed in a tropical rainforest has a vastly different ecological impact than 1 million gallons consumed in an arid desert. If a dairy processor is pulling 60% of its total water from a watershed that's already in severe, prolonged drought, well, this specific metric strips away all the PR messaging. It forces that immense, highly localized risk right out into the open for every investor and regulator to see. Section 3. Measuring water quality non-compliance. Tracking regulatory violations. So what happens when dirty water goes back into the environment? That's where metric 140A.3 comes in. It acts as the ultimate watchdog for water quality. Look, animal production and processing inevitably generate vast amounts of heavily contaminated wastewater. This metric mandates full public disclosure of any non-compliance with water permits. So a company has to publicly report if they discharge a hazardous substance, if they fail strict pretreatment requirements before sending water to a municipal facility, or if they exceed their total maximum daily load, which is basically the absolute maximum limit of agricultural pollutants a local body of water can take while still legally meeting safety and quality standards. And when it comes to this metric, 0 is the absolute only number a company ever wants to report. Because we aren't talking about minor administrative hiccups or, filing some paperwork late. This metric tracks formal enforcement actions. We're talking about government-issued administrative penalty orders and severe judicial actions. It is a stark binary indicator. The local regulators have stepped in. If this number ticks even slightly above 0, it is a massive red flag that a company's internal environmental controls have fundamentally failed. Section 4. Managing Land and Animal Waste. The Nutrient Management Plan. Shifting gears over to land use, metric 168.1 exposes an incredible accountability gap by splitting its required data right down the middle. First, companies have to disclose the sheer volume in metric tons of animal litter and manure generated across all their operations. But the crucial second half, it demands they report the precise percentage of that massive pile that is actually managed according to a formal nutrient management plan. Look, generating 1 million tons of manure is just a data point, but disclosing that 80% of it is left completely unmanaged, that's the actual crisis. It totally separates the act of creating industrial waste from the responsibility of properly handling it. And let's be clear, a nutrient management plan is not just some corporate buzzword. To even qualify under this SASB standard, it has to be a heavily structured scientific blueprint. The plan has to rigorously document complex site conditions. It has to mandate strict engineering protocols for how manure is safely stored to prevent catastrophic runoff. It details specific land treatment practices, and it includes extensive continuous soil risk assessments. It's basically the ultimate proof test. Is this company treating this immense volume of waste as a hazardous byproduct to be carefully neutralized and repurposed, or is it just a massive liability left to degrade the local watershed? Section 5. Why these metrics matter. Evaluating corporate risk. Ultimately, these environmental metrics, they are actually hardcore financial risk evaluation tools. The connection between ecology and economics here is absolute. Consuming too much water in a drought-stricken area leads directly to forced operational shutdowns. Failing water quality standards triggers steep regulatory fines and massive, unexpected compliance costs just to upgrade infrastructure. And poorly managed animal waste, that practically guarantees severe community pushback, delayed zoning permits, and long-lasting reputational damage. This is exactly why analysts and institutional investors obsess over this standardized data. It translates physical, ecological realities directly onto the corporate balance sheet. So now that you understand the actual mechanics behind water scarcity tracking, formal enforcement indicators, and rigorous nutrient management blueprints, you have the exact tools you need to demand concrete transparency. The next time a corporate sustainability report crosses your desk, will you just settle for the glossy photos of green fields, or will you flip straight to the data and check the actual SASB metrics? Thanks for diving into the explainer with me today, and remember, always keep questioning the data.